And we are live. How you guys doing? I hope you guys are doing well. I know I am. Today we have a very, very special guest right now. I mean, this is just great. I'm really looking forward to this, man. What's funny about this, and I'll talk about it, is I'm sorry. I'm just making sure that I'm spreading this out to all my socials. I want to make sure everyone knows because this is a huge deal. This is my new series, Vaughn Coleman Presents. Uh, I, I was like thinking of a title. I'm like, do I want to, and I was like, let's just keep it simple, right? And so yeah, we're gonna have a guest. I'm trying to do this hopefully every Sunday. There might be some times and days where I have to switch it up. So in that case, I will probably, hmm, I'll probably we'll figure it out. But for now, this is our very first episode, and it's really exciting. I'm really happy to be here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to introduce my first guest because one of the things that I found out actually after I had met him was that, and I read some of his comics, was that he worked on a game that was pretty foundational to me building my channel. Um, for those of you, I highly doubt anyone in the chat has been there from the beginning, but if you have, you're a trooper because those earlier videos were not the best, but there you go. Now it's spread to all my soul. Oh shit! I thought I was still in my PC. This is going great. Um, I closed the wrong. um, can you guys? Shit. Is my Wi-Fi? It's saying it's unstable. I don't think it is. I think it's lying to me. I think it's lying to me. Um, I'm gonna bring up his Kickstarter campaign, but ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce my next guest. So he's done some great work. If you've seen the video thumbnail, you've seen some of it. I was honestly shocked at how much was on there because you look at Comic Bind, it has like a list of the issues, and it's not always accurate. But I mean, over 500 issues to his name. Please welcome Justin Gray. Justin, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm
Thanks for
doing
having me
great.
on.
No, thanks for coming on. It means a lot. So you've got a new book coming out, and you've got some great stuff behind you. I'm a big fan of comics and video games too. So it's I mean it's crazy to see how you've worked in both mediums. But before you got to where you are now, I am curious as to how you started out, how you got into it, because everyone I know has a different story about how they got started, like writing and whatnot,
Mhm.
and how they found comics or stuff. So I'm just curious. So what's your background, and then how did it lead you to pursue the path you wanted to pursue?
I started reading very young. I can't remember how I got a hold of comics, and I know it was like the old Harvey comics, which had Hot Stuff and Casper, and I forget there was a witch character.
I don't know
And,
if I know that. I'll have to look into it.
and then I moved on from that to Spider-Man and then the Marvel Universe and just kind of stuck with it till all the way up until about college. Then I took a couple years off and got back into it around the time that James Robinson and Tony Harris were doing Starman.
Mm,
Started reading that, and I hadn't read a lot of DC throughout my childhood, um, and that's when I started. I was living in Seattle, and I was trying to get work with publishers. So I was submitting stuff all the time, but nothing was really getting anyone's attention. So I was trying to find an artist to work with, which is it's the eternal cycle.
right.
It's a
Oh, I'm
difficult thing
familiar
to
with
do.
it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started out wanting to draw comics, and then the things that I saw in my head, I could never put them on paper. So that's
Oh,
when
really?
I should probably just stick with the writing part of it. And then just, I pursued it for years, sort of half-heartedly, and then moved back to New York from Seattle and just decided to really kind of give it a shot. And so I was using the internet to bother creators, and I started talking to Joe Quesada, and and I met Joe and Jimmy and Nelson DeCastro and some other people in the city one night, and then after that, I had been working in restaurants at the time, and Wizard World Chicago was coming up, and I didn't want to work that weekend, and I was like, I'm just going to go to Wizard World Chicago, and if I get fired, I get fired. I'm going to go. So I drove from New York to Chicago, found a hotel room, called all the hotels near the convention center until I got a hold of Joe Quesada, and he invited me to come hang out with them for the con. And about, I don't know if it's a month later, but it wasn't that much longer afterwards that I was interning at Marvel Knights.
Wow, that's crazy. Oh, so you were an intern.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you started off. So what did you do as an intern? I'm curious how that works.
Initially, I was a gopher. I didn't really know. It's funny when you reading comics is very different from working at Marvel. It's just a very different perception, because if you grow up on Marvel Comics, you grow up on Stan Lee's sort of, this allure of Marvel Comics as not only a personal thing, but it's also you're a part of it. It makes Stan always made people feel like they were part of Marvel Comics. They had a proprietary interest in the characters, which was one of the great things that he would do. And so, it's a job, it's a business. It's still behind the other side of it. It isn't exactly, it's the bullpen is the bullpen, and it's not exactly like you would think it was based on, how it was presented. But it was an interesting experience. I'd get them lunch, and then I slowly started working on things like Blue Lines, and I would take comics to the Comics Code and drop them off and pick them up to see which ones, if they needed to make changes according to the Comics Code. This is right before they finally walked away from it.
When did they stop the Comics Code? Was that? It
was in the 90s.
Yeah, I'm surprised how long it lasted.
Or actually, maybe the 2000, like very early 2000s, somewhere around. Marvel Knights just kind of was, I think, part of the catalyst for them just finally saying, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how, the Comics Code kind of kept things for kids, and creators and everyone else was so tired of doing it that way. They were pushing it for more and more adult stuff.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of like, and my analogy always was that nobody's going to want to read an dark adult Scooby-Doo.
Right.
And
right.
Apparently I was right.
Yeah. According to,
I said this years and years ago, but I was just kind of like, if you're taking everything and trying to shoehorn it into, a demographic, because you're chasing the demographic. So I'm like, instead of, the way that Disney does everything is they get a hold of you when you're an infant, whether you're wearing their clothes or playing with their toys, and then they bring you all the way up through adulthood.
Right.
So it's kind of an interesting and somewhat insidious business model, but that's what I was hoping that was going to happen. They were going to be able to categorize comics and say, okay, if you're going to do mature comics, lead them up to that.
Yeah, right. That's a tough balance to find too. It's like, I often find my script, I'm like, I character like something that's completely mundane, like in a superhero. So if I'm writing for example, like a slash movie script, I don't really like something that I know is going to be rated R. It's no big deal. But if it's a superhero thing, like there one time where I'm like, I remember I sent feedback to my friend. He goes, "Oh, this is a big thing. Like, why doesn't he like swear?" I'm like, because like even I felt bad. I was like, "Oh, should he say damn it?" Like, ugh. Like what if a parent doesn't? But it's also that idea that it's like you can't always appeal to everyone. No. I actually just finished reading your Terra thing. Honestly, one of the things, and I'll talk about that in a sec, but one of the things when I was making this thumbnail, I was like, it feels bad, especially now hearing your Marvel stuff, that I didn't put any of the Marvel stuff. You have so much stuff under your belt, like even just looking at it, because you started, let's see, 90, it's like over 500 issues. I mean, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is a little crazy. I didn't really put that all, together in my head, how many comics that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I only did a few things at Marvel. I didn't really, I kept trying at Marvel, and it just wasn't really working for me. There are characters I wanted to work on that were, I pitched a bunch of different things to them, and it just never quite came together the way I wanted it to. And that was unfortunate because, I grew up with those characters. But I also changed a lot. By the time I got actually working in comics, the things that I wanted to do before, I didn't want really necessarily to do them anymore.
Right.
So that was an interesting situation. I was growing more enamored with doing, stuff like that came from me, as opposed to sort of carrying the torch for, a character.
Right.
And I like doing it, but I also, it's very rare when you get a situation, at least I think, I don't know that if you're going to be able to get that kind of situation again, where with Jonah Hex, Jimmy and I were able to just do the book on our own. It was not on our own, but people just kind of ignored us.
Right.
So you didn't really have a lot of interference.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering because I'm not. So honestly, the way I know Jonah Hex most is I swear every time they do a time travel DC story, they always go to the West and they always have Jonah Hex. It's like an obligatory, like they did that in the Justice League animated show. They did that in the Legends. Every time there's always a Western episode and they always have Jonah Hex. And I like when he showed like there was even I remember it pissed me off the time because I got into comics through other mediums. And there was an episode of Batman the Animated Series that I'm sure if I watched it again, I'd appreciate it more. But like, I want to see Batman, and it was just this guy, and I was like, who the hell is this? Like, and I was just so confused because I think it was like Ra's. I don't know what he was doing in the 1800s in America. I don't know why Ra's al Ghul was, but like, I forget. But I guess everyone apparently went to the Wild West at some point during the 1800s in the DC universe.
Yeah,
but yeah, I guess
we had to move them forward in time.
Yeah, even if they're from the Middle East. But yeah, Jonah Hex was a character I'm not as familiar with. I don't know a lot of his history, but I do know your guys' run. I mean, 70 issues. That's crazy. I see it. Like I've seen it multiple times. Like the trades are all like often I'll see them around still. But it's tough because they're not numbered, so I don't know which one to pick up first.
Yeah, because most of them are standalone stories.
Oh,
so,
is that what it is? That's
you don't have to. Yeah, of those 70, there's a 6-issue story arc, and then there's a couple of 2-issue story arcs, like the introduction of Tallulah Black, but for the most part, they're standalone issues. There's probably almost 60 standalone issues.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome.
Part of the appeal.
So yeah, that's like the old school comics approach almost, and it's something I struggle with too. Is like, I mean, every writer does this, but like, there's the condensing of the story. I always think my brilliant idea is, oh, I'm different, I can make it, and it's like everyone thinks that, and it's just condensing it is, it's a big thing. So what drew you to Jonah Hex? Were you a fan of the character? Because it sounds like you were more of a Marvel guy. Were you a fan of the character before, or?
I was a fan of what gave birth to the character. Like all the 70s spaghetti westerns, Clint Eastwood movies. I was a fan of that. So when Jimmy was a fan of Jonah Hex and wanted to get Jonah Hex, wanted us on it. And there was another writer who was interested in it, and then he ultimately passed and it fell in our lap. And I was just like, at the time we had been doing Hawkman, so we just finished like a 12-issue storyline in Hawkman. And our editor, Stephen Wacker, was like, let's just do single-issue stories. Let's go back to that model. And for the first little bit, I was kind of struggling with the idea of it, but then it's like totally informed how I would write moving forward from that point. Not wanting to do these super wide open storylines that take so many issues to complete, and putting more into each issue of storyline, more important things happening, and not a lot of filler in them.
Yeah,
which is a kind of something I see a lot now, but I mean, it's been like that for a while.
Massive crossover events that have the whole universe, and you have to read like 10 different books.
I really don't like that. I don't like that as a reader or as a writer. I don't like. Yeah, because it ends up to me, it waters down the everything. It just waters everything down, and it's not fair to make people buy 70 comics to get a story that could have been told in 6 comics.
Yeah, I've been reading. It's weird. A lot of the stuff I read is older. Like, so I've been reading Chris Claremont's X-Men run, and it's like I'm at the point where now there's like 5 different titles. So it goes from just like one book, and then the occasional mini series too, and it's a lot. But what I do like, I could technically drop some of the titles and be fine. Like, there's no reason why I have to. But I'm like, I'm 50 issues into X Factor. Might as well. Keep going. But it's like, yeah, I think that's one of the things is keeping it self-contained. The fact that not only is it self-contained within each issue, like within the series, but also within each issue is cool. And I was wondering that too. That's one of the first things I thought is Jonah Hex must have been so, just to have it set, like even if it is in the DC universe, to have it set so far back that it's like you don't have to worry about any of that. That must be so fun. I also love Westerns in general. Like I didn't grow up on them, but I started discovering them more so when I was in college and film school. Like The Searchers, I remember actually we had to read a script for a movie we hadn't seen. and I was like, I don't know why. I just was like, let's choose a Western. And I was like, all right, The Searcher sounds cool. And I read the script before I watched the movie and had to direct scenes from it. And it was really, I mean, it was great. Like that's probably my favorite one. I like Shane as well.
Mhm.
Fistful of Dollars. I haven't finished the trilogy, but yeah, I mean, Westerns are. I just love the freedom of it, and I mean, there's just so much to do with the Western. There really is.
Yeah, and it keeps coming back, and it keeps coming
Mhm.
back in different kinds of ways. And I think I really like it. And I like it in all its different forms. I like it, the European ones. I like the American ones.
Mhm.
I like the mashups. I like the I mean, Die Hard's a Western. It's just like
Hmm.
there's so many different types of ways to tell a Western story.
Right.
Um,
Star Wars even too. I mean, like I was shocked like watching it, like the scene where they come back in the searchers to like the burning place, like straight up Star Wars straight up took that. Like with the Luke coming
George
back.
borrowed a lot from a lot of things.
Oh, I noticed. Yeah. It was apparently supposed to be like a Flash Gordon, and then he couldn't get the rights or something. So he was like, all right, I'll just make my own, which I think is a great way to go about it. And that's one of the things you touched on too, the idea of carrying the torch versus creating your own things, is because I'm a fanboy, but it's like, as I've gotten older, I'm kind of like, yeah, but I want to have something to own. And I'd love to work on that stuff because it shows, hey, I've worked on this. Then you might like my stuff on that, come here. So that's a great resume builder. But like
Well,
building your own.
it's also part of the other side of when you were saying, well, you're 50 issues in on X Factor. Um, that's a lot of times people won't branch out from that.
Right.
It's an automatic purchase instead of saying, let me try
Right.
this thing, which is part of the struggle for
Mhm.
indie comics. And people have been sort of educated on this is what to expect.
Right.
And the fact that people are accepting a comic that only has 18 to 20 pages of story content for
Right.
$5,
Mhm.
and the other 15 pages are ads or like designy stuff.
Yeah.
As a consumer, I can't. That's why these
Yeah.
books are 26, 28, 30, 56 pages that I'm doing, because it just
Yeah.
doesn't correlate for me.
And I really like that, and I totally I agree as a consumer because that's one of the things I kind of took a step back from just a lot of franchise in general because I was a big franchise guy, and I go, okay, why am I just blindly walking what just because I like stuff they did in the past? I was like, let's see what the other independent people, because I was kind of disillusioned with why did I fall in love with this stuff in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't like it, it's okay to just be like, you know what, I'm not interested this time. It's okay. I'll give it to someone else. There's tons of content, in my backlog. Why don't I give it to some of the newer guys? So I haven't been reading, aside from like the Silvestri Batman issues that have been coming out. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't been reading much Marvel or DC. I've been mostly, honestly, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and I'm like, I'm usually very happy with what I get. Like especially I love your stuff. Like Standstill
Thank you.
is my favorite ongoing, or like my favorite indie series. Those 12 issues were so, like, I would genuinely get excited like every time I saw those coming live. I like the fact that you also package them like issues too, like because a lot of the time, like that, I honestly like the staple look. I like the aesthetic of it. And I love the covers that each one had a distinct cover. I thought that was so fun. I like Billy the Kid too.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. What else?
Yeah, we're working on season 2 of that right now. I just went through some of the art and did some lettering on it. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's gonna
That's
be fun.
great. All right. Yeah. Oh, see. Oh, right. You told me you do your own lettering, right?
Yeah, I use a pseudonym for it just as a joke, but yeah, I've
Oh,
been lettering them for a while now, and
yeah. I
as
remember.
I go back and like look at stuff I did 4 or 5 years ago, I'm like, oh, I have to fix that. It's a lot,
Right.
when you're re-lettering, 64 pages of comics. I'm like, let me go back and do this because I can't stand looking at it. Um,
So I'm curious as to, because you and Jimmy Palmiotti have written a lot together. So how did that like start? And also, I'm also just curious as to how that works, that kind of partnership. Because I know as a writer, people get protective, and I'm also just curious because it's obviously not like you're literally just typing like over each other's
it's
shoulders.
not
So
like
I'm
we're playing
curious.
piano together. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, it's like a duet. Yeah, different sides of the keyboard. Like, all right, you get A through G. Yeah, no, I know it's.
well,
So
I
I
mean,
am
it
just
is.
curious
It's
about
some
that.
of it is like that because when you comics are collaboration no matter what. If it's two writers, if it's writer and artist, if it's, even everyone involved in it is a collaborator to it. And you have to be, I mean, I'm specific about things and wide open about other things. So as it worked with Jimmy, we would just discuss the general idea. What's our concept? What's our plan? And then, we'd offer ideas, and then we would just sort of whittle through the ideas. That's good. This is trash. Here's my shitty idea. Here's that good idea. And then we just go, all right, who's feeling this one? And then I'll say, okay, I'm feeling this one. Let me go do a draft of the script. So I have to go do a draft of the script, send the script to him, and he'll go through it and be like, nah, this needs to change, or you missed a moment here where you could have had a bigger thing happen. And it should just kind of kick it around back and forth like that until it, it goes to the editor, and then, they give their notes. So it's really, especially when you're doing, work for hire at one of the corporations, you can't really be too precious about it. Because it's just like, it's not your character ultimately at the end of the day, which is why I said the Jonah Hex experience was so special, is that we were literally just like kids in a candy store, writing whatever we wanted to write and going, we want to work with this artist. And the editor would go and reach out to that artist, and because everybody, with few exceptions, most people wanted to do a Western for all kinds of different reasons. Some of it's just to do something different. So maybe it's an artist that's been drawing superheroes for 7 years, and they're like, I really want to draw something else. And then the content and the style, we kept changing the style. We do like a grindhouse Western, then we do a traditional Western, then we do a European style Western. And so when you're doing the other thing, then, someone walks in your office or someone calls you and says, well, you can't use this character because this writer wants to use that character. And, then all of a sudden your plans are messed up, or you have to write everything down that you're going to do. This is the thing that gets me, and this is one of the things I'm much happier about doing things now, is that you have to create a 6-month overview of what you're going to do. And for me, you talk about Standstill was written and rewritten so many times before it even got to that point. I do like 5 rewrites on one script, and as I'm writing it, and then say, I go in and I start lettering it, I rewrite it again. And the original script is just kind of, it's on the page now. It's not in a Word file anymore. And I think that because things come up and you change and you breathe and you want things to be organic when you're writing. And I always felt kind of locked into a box and felt like, all right, now I got to go build this house. I'm like, we did the blueprint looks awesome. I had so much fun making the blueprint, but now I actually have to go build it 6 months later. And you kind of lose, at least I do. It's not as exciting as it is the way I do things now, which is essentially just write stuff. Especially with Branko, I just write paragraphs. I'm like, here's page 1. We need this to happen leading up to page 2. Here's the page turn and this happens. And then I worry about dialogue unless it's very specific to whatever it is. So I go, okay, here's a 3-panel page because I know I'm going to have a lot of conversation going on with the characters. And then here's 5 pages of just go crazy and do stuff with monsters.
I do that too. And one of the things I find interesting is that there's because I came from screenwriting. That's what I majored in. And the fact that there's like no specific script format for comic books, I find like the first one, I worked as an editor for Hunter Ninja Bear, and so that was the first comic book script I read. And I was like, my style was basically, I just kind of took that and was like, okay, like, it's not a bad artist to replicate. I'm a writer to replicate. So I would be like, okay, so this guy knows what he's doing. I kind of and it's very visual, but I really like the fluidity of writing comics as opposed to screenplays. I like that you can be very general in some areas and I often will say in my notes, like, yeah, if you think of something better than this, or, let's talk about this, or sometimes I'll say, this is what happens over the next few pages. Sometimes, but like sometimes I'm very specific. Like I love that you could do reference images, just like all kinds of. I think that's so fun, and the writing and rewriting thing. I mean, yeah, like I get OCD with that too. Like every day I'm like, oh, but is this that good? And then I read it, I'm like, no, it's fine. So I totally get that. It's yeah.
It's like you sometimes will say like I could have opened it this way. And I have time, and I haven't had someone go, no, we're locked into this and it has to be this way. I can go, oh, let me double back and take something from the script for 7 and have it pay off in the script for 9 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
It's the little things, and
Yeah.
I think that's great.
And that drives me crazy because, especially if it sounds like, because you do these long running stories, it drives me crazy if I change something in like a later issues or an earlier issue, and I'm like, okay, wait, now do I have to go all the way? How many issues do I have to revise because of this like one little, like, even if I change a panel, it'll have like a ripple effect.
I hate when I come up with a better character name and I'm like, oh, okay,
yeah, because you're already used to it, yeah, or you have to read. Yeah,
you can't do that in Illustrator. You can't just search out 100 pages.
Or I have the reverse. Like, there was one character that was throwaway, and I was like, I had a name for a character that was really cool, and I'm like, you know what, this is too cool for this character. I'm gonna save this. This character is just like a one-off. This character's like a high school character, and this name is like a rock star superhero name. I'm gonna take this name back. Let's give a more generic one. Like, that happens too. But yeah, I'm sure you have this. Do you ever just like write down names, or just like if you come up with something? Like, in my phone, I'm always writing down ideas just constantly.
Yeah, I'm always like, it's funny because especially like now with doing Hope, where it's very fluid and very organic. So I get an idea as I'm scripting issue 3, I get an idea and I'm like, oh, I got to go back and do stuff in 1 and 2 because there's a character name. I'm like, oh, and now it's not just a name. Now it's a thing. Now it's like, now I'm like looking at the characters as symbolic of being things. So I gave this character a generic name, and then I'm like, okay, now I want the names to mean more because Hope means something, and there's another character. So I went back and changed this one character's name to match the same sort of lineage as those names. So it's very, very it's fun and exciting. And when you think of stuff accidentally, sometimes you get stuck on things, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I just solved the problem, or the problem worked itself out in your head. And having the freedom to be able to go back in and change it is pretty great.
It's honestly a miracle that writers can have any self-esteem at all, because I feel like 90% of writing is just beating yourself up. It's just like this idea sucks. How do I make it better? Because I feel like a lot of writing, like at least my notes, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, a lot of my writing is like, maybe this, oh, what if this? Oh, why is this? Like, that's a lot of what writing is. It's just like, it's almost like interrogating yourself about your story. Like, oh yeah, well, why did this happen? And that does make you better. Or even as an editor too, that it's like, you basically just ask these kinds of questions. So I do want to bring up your Hope page. I want to share it. Everyone, if you haven't backed this yet, make sure you do. Should we take a look at the trailer?
Sure.
Yeah, let's take a look at the trailer real quick, and then we'll get right back to this. Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, let me step out of there. That was and here we can go through the tiers, but yeah, I like the black and white art style. I think I like that it doesn't look like anything else really on the shelf. Like, the black and white art is it's great. I mean,
and he's really, this is just Branko's just doing Branko. So I'm like, I'm like, just go, be as experimental as you want, be as whatever. Every once in a while I see something in there, I'm like, oh, that looks like Frank Miller's Ronin. Or there's some inking style he'll use, or he'll use negative space, really interesting ways. I just love it, and I love working with him. And there's like so much trust that we have between each other. He'll just get back to me. He's like, this page didn't really work for me, so I changed the page. And I'm like, fine, I'm sure it looks good. And he did something recently. I was like, this is so much better than what I wrote. Doing that.
That's one of those things I know a lot of people talk about. It's like when the artist comes up with something that's even better, that's just got to be a great feeling.
Yeah.
Even yeah, I mean, there's tons of stories like that. So, what's the story about for those people that aren't familiar?
It's about these. It's kind of it's a western, as we were talking. There's a lot of western elements to it.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to do was kind of reverse engineer the idea of when the settlers were moving across the western states, and not so much the conflict that's the obvious conflict. Another reason why I like this is because it takes all the modern stuff away,
Mm-hmm.
and the characters can just be characters.
Right,
There's no traps for them to fall into, no social traps for them to fall in,
right,
no political issues for them. It's just people
right.
being people in like really starting over. We still have some stuff left over
Mm.
from 20 years ago when this event took place that made the planet less much more hostile towards us. It kind of bumped us back in time while
Right.
still being in the future. And I like the idea of this kind of story, which seeing things we don't normally see. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it always bugs me when there's still cars and
Right.
there's still a lot of gas stuff, and so I really took a lot of pains to look at how some of this stuff would work logically, and then some of it's just fun. Some of it's
Yeah. Right. So
some of
it's a
it's not
mix
going
of
to be
both.
so grounded. But the weather can be a really dangerous thing, and there's ways to tell stories about that are interesting. And then diseases, they don't have the internet anymore. They don't have communication or instant knowledge. Sorry, my dog is
It's all good.
going nuts. He had surgery 12 days ago.
Oh, how's he doing?
He's doing all right. He's 80 pounds and 8 months old, and he's a monster.
Oh, wow.
He's
What
tired of being,
breed?
sedated, and so he's not supposed to be running around a lot. So when he does wake up, he's a handful.
It's crazy. Wow, what breed is he that he's 80
He's a
pounds?
Rottweiler.
Oh, okay, that'll do it. Yeah, that'll
Yeah,
do it.
he's a Rottweiler.
Yeah, this sounds great. Yeah, I like the when it like this whole removal from society. I think because people also often really want, when they turn to entertainment and escape, like they like having obviously some things talked about that relate to their lives, but they also want that escape. And I
Yeah.
think this sounds exactly like that.
Yeah, I wanted to, and I want to escape. I'm writing that also because I'm watching stuff and I'm like, oh, I don't want to watch this anymore. I don't want to see
Yeah,
the story anymore.
yeah,
But I want to be able to also write about all different kinds of characters who are not anything like me, who don't look
right,
anything like me. But if I start writing certain time, writing a story in a certain time, then there's expectations that it has to be,
right.
reflecting of those times. In this case, and this is a thing I've always enjoyed, is just like survival of people who, who wins, who loses. It doesn't matter. Like we place a lot of emphasis on certain qualities that we think, make people survivors or make people strong or make people leaders. And oftentimes, I think when you strip everything down, you get a lot of unexpected results. Yeah, you might get some people because they're bigger and stronger, some people because they're, crafty and they're more conniving. But I like the opportunity, and it's like a Western. You see them trying to build civilization back, but what kind of civilization do they want? Knowing what life was like before, all those things that people talk about now. Do they want to try and remake that world, or do they want to try and do something else? I
Right.
think that's an interesting way of approaching storytelling, and it keeps it fresh. It keeps it, because everything can be a danger.
Yeah.
So I can
Right.
tell a small story about trying not to freeze to death in a cave, or I can tell a big story about two warring factions in these small
Right.
towns. And I introduced. There's a whole bunch of elements just in these two issues alone, because of the inciting event. Whatever happened 20 years ago changed almost everything on the planet. And so you have these chimera, which are these mixtures of different kinds of animals that have sort of
Mhm.
evolved into new animals. And then you have some people who are affected. There are people who have genetic ties to things that are animals. They start to take on attributes, where some are stronger, some are faster, some have a better sense of smell, some see in the dark. But it's not full blown superpowers. It's just
Right.
that they now have some of these kids have a little something extra, and
Right.
that scares the hell out of everyone else that doesn't have something extra. So you get to create this sort of um, conflict between groups of people, and there's no like specific group of people that are impacted. Everyone across the board has the potential for being born like this. It's just kind of a random thing.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, even just you talking about the world and the freedom it gives, it's great because that's one of the things that I'm sure that must have been, while fun, a pain about Jonah Hex. I imagine is you must have had to do like a lot of research into like 1800s and things like that.
Which I
Right?
love.
Or
I love doing
yeah,
research. But the thing that we were doing with Jonah Hex, because it was one and done stories, it had to be really lean. It had to be really emotional, and
right.
that's it's easier than you think. It's nice to write stuff where you don't have technology interrupting it. Like, why didn't you, why didn't you
Yeah,
call the phone and you have to write
yeah.
a
Why
thing?
didn't you
Like,
call? Yeah,
there's
you
no
have to.
service out here. That whole
That
thing.
oh, I had to do that in a slash movie scoop because it's like Halloween they can get away with it, but I'm like, shit, like okay, fine, they're in the mountains or something, okay? They just or they cut the power. I don't know. Like you have to almost have to come up with all these elaborate things. So to have that built into your world, your instant, nope, nope, none of that's a
Right.
like
These
that's
are no longer options for these characters. Don't have the internet. They don't have, they have to make biodiesel, and they have to be conservative. And I watched this YouTube channel. It's this couple, and they live off the grid in Alaska. And I get a lot of ideas just watching how they're living their lives and how they manage their food system. And and I look at stuff like that because that interests me. That stuff already. I'm like, I'm signed in for that.
that's so cool. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to reading this. And I like that you because a lot of people they just do one big size issue. I'm just curious, why do you normally do two?
Um, well, I ran it past the backers because that's my audience. So it used to be I
Right.
was worried about where on the top 300 is this comic going to land, and how many issues am I going to get out of it, and is it going to be marketed, or is it just an IP holder type comic, like doing Phantom Lady and Doll Man was just kind of like you're just holding on to the IP, and
Mhm.
so now it's just the people that I do this for are the people who are reading it and enjoying
Yeah.
it. And yeah, I'd like to expand that group of people, but I also feel very beholden to making sure that they're entertained and that they get enough content. I mean, I don't really, again, it goes back to like, okay, you get 18 pages story, 13, 15 pages of ads and in-house stuff. I don't want to do that. I want there to be a meaty story um, that can be enjoyed in one sitting. You actually get something. I feel like I want people to be invested in it and feel like they got their money's worth out of it.
Yeah, that's yeah, I agree. That's and I like the aesthetic of like again because I started with trades, the even just the aesthetic of having it coming out in issues. I like getting those from yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things that's great about crowdfunding, right? Is you're appealing directly to fans. You're not, just this. And the speculator market, obviously, look, everyone likes to make money, although it did have problems in the '90s. But I like that exactly these people want your book, and
Right.
it makes it you get a closer relationship with your audience. And that's one of the things I think that's unique about comics, and especially crowdfunding, um, is and like. Is that it's not just like because I've bought issues that I haven't even read just because I'm like this might be worth some and I'm like why am I doing that and again
Mm.
I stepped away but like this is great and I like that you add more pages and your stuff reads fast in the sense that it's like it's just so entertaining. Like there are sometimes comics where you read where you're like, oh, I have to power through this. But now with you like with
Mm.
your stuff, it's always a consistent pace. And I like even like going back, I was reading like Terra. I read those issues like very fast. Um I like the pace of your stuff.
Thank you.
So you've got A side and B side covers.
Yep.
Hold on, I'm just going through the tiers here. All right, yeah, the standstill trade paperbacks. I highly recommend these. I got them in single issues, but yeah.
Yeah, it
Oh,
gets
you have
it's
digital.
a lot doing single issues on those things. Even just doing a Kickstarter for 1 through 6, it's a lot to wrangle. It's a lot, as opposed to just doing a trade.
Yeah. Well, I think your model is smart, where you release them initially as single issues, and then you go back with the trade. It's like, all right, now it's a trade. I think that's a great way to go about it.
I'm just trying to find a way to to make people happy, to like
Mm-hmm.
not just in the but in the way the comic comes and the way that they can
Mm-hmm.
get the comic. I went through a lot of growing pains initially with the first couple Kickstarters, trying to figure out the best way to package it, the
Mm-hmm.
best way to put it together. And again, the 2 issues feels like some people don't like the thicker, because if I was going to do 2 issues, I'd do square bound.
Right.
And there's arguments about for and against that.
Right. Square bound. Sorry, what's square bound?
Yeah, just like a trade paperback. So like it's
Oh,
just
okay.
a smaller, because these are like 56, 58 pages together.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So then you'll just have that. Yeah, because that's the other thing about doing it this way is I'm not beholden to whatever the page count would normally be. I guess what is like 20 pages, 21
Right.
pages, like seems to be the norm across at least the superhero spectrum. Some of the indies do more.
Right.
But I want it to be the comic. That's why I don't have a lot of stretch goal. I don't have stretch goals for this. It's not really a bells and whistles kind of comic like something like Bleeding Pulp or Spicy Pulp would be.
Right.
It just doesn't have that same thing. This is all about the read. This is all about the story. There's some stuff in here, if you're a collector and you like to have oddities, there's glow in the dark cover. I wanted to try out because I think it looks cool. And,
yeah, that sounds cool. And you got the hollow foil, I see.
Yeah. Just some nicer things for folks that like to collect things
Right.
that aren't going to be anywhere else.
Sounds like everything you're doing is just like, I mean, obviously for yourself too, but just making your audience happy.
Yeah, that's my hope.
Yeah.
I keep saying that. I realize how many times a day I say the word hope now since
this, yeah.
been going on.
You've already got some. Yeah, this all looks. I mean, everything. You've got the standstill stuff too. You have the glow in the dark. I mean, glow in the dark. You can't go wrong with that. Like I remember even there was a time like I don't even, no, I did read the comic. There was a comic that wasn't even that memorable, but it had the glow in the dark cover, and I would just be in my room, and at night, like I just forgot, like I had it on my shelf, and turned the lights off, and I'm like, oh, it's so cool. So I mean, those are always cool. So yeah, we got guys. Make sure to Let's try and get this to hit 400. This is great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. So we'll get back to that and promote it at the end, but yeah, I wanted to talk. So, okay. So that's really interesting hearing so there were some that like Jimmy initially scripted that you went back to, and then there were some that were the reverse.
Yep.
That's really cool. And you guys did a lot, and I assume Power Girl. So my introduction to you was, unknowingly, my introduction to you was Injustice and MK vs. DC, but I didn't know that you were, I didn't even know when I first met you that you had worked on those. I still haven't gotten, I forgot when I went to Garden State, I forgot my Injustice. I was going to get you to sign it. But my knowing introduction to you was the Power Girl series. And I remember when I was going to Terrificon, that was like you, Paul Mounts. Well, I didn't even know Paul Mounts was going to be there, I don't think. But it was you, Paul Mounts, Jimmy, and Amanda. It was like that whole creative team. So I was like, all right, I got to get an issue. I got the one with Tara, and I got you guys all to sign that. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, I've been trying to get that whole series, that whole Power Girl series. Look, I read it for the same reason, like any straight guy reads a series initially, like when I got the cover, but I was like, it's just such a fun series. Like that's one of the things, like it's one of those, it's only 12 issues. It's one of those runs I recommend to a lot of people because only 12 issues. It's lighthearted and fun, and it reads fast. Like I love that series. I'd love to see it. I mean, even if it's never adapted, it doesn't matter because it's just great on its own. But like, yeah, I love the art. I love the writing. Let's see. That's just fun book.
There's a lot of fun, and I love working with those guys. And anything Amanda does, if Amanda's involved, it's going to be better.
Oh yeah.
No matter what?
Her art is. I mean, I was speed reading, but really, I just read like even right before this, even like counting down, I was reading through Terra. Because I wanted to because I know you guys created that obviously not the original, but the third version, right?
I think it's the third,
yeah. And so I wanted to read that, and like because that's the same creative team, and you feels the same energy. Like the the dialogue you guys write is just fun. It just really does. I remember when I brought that one copy over to Amanda, first thing she goes, "Oh, this was so fun. This is such a fun run." And it really is. It's
I
just
think that's where I just started to shift away from, everything was so serious and everything
yeah,
like life or death. And initially DC suggested Power Girl be more brooding and moody, and I couldn't see it. I'm like, she has everything.
mhm,
I mean, yeah,
yeah.
okay, she lost her universe, but
Yeah, which
she
is
has
that's
everything else.
something to be sad about. But yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So, that's the last thing we needed was another mopey character.
Mm.
And so we fought for that, and then that's what they let us do. And then, like escapism, it's supposed to be
Yeah.
escapist fun. It's not. You're not supposed to be going, oh, this is Justin. Justin has an opinion about something.
Yeah.
And he's putting that opinion into someone else's mouth, and I'm just
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
for the superhero stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I like. A lot of that stuff started happening where I was like, I don't want
Yeah.
to
Right.
take fun out of it.
Yeah. I just want to have fun. Yeah. That's one of the things I like about Terra is like that too. It's just pure fun. It's yeah. I mean, that stuff usually ages the best too. Stuff that's just the good story ages the best.
We try not
But
to put too many references in there to
yeah.
what time it's happening in and
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah, that too. Again, and like sometimes you can go like even for example, I love the Lee Ditko Spider-Man, but there's so many times where they reference stuff from the '60s. I'm like, okay, now I have to Google this. Like he'll make like, oh, that girl's beautiful. That girl looks just like. Oh, this guy's a real whatever, and they'll be like, this guy's funny. Like, and then I'm like, okay, who's this? All right, he was a comedian in like the '40s. Okay, and
Right.
I have to go, and then it like interrupts the pace. Even like sometimes like even like I like the Deadpool movie, but even at the time there were references in that movie. Like there was like like they were like, "Oh, you look like this." And it's like, "Who if I show this movie to my kids, I barely even get the reference." And then if I show it to my kids, they'll be like, "Who is that?" And I'll be like, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that I feel like often dates things. But that Power Girl run, it's actually I read that whole run, like even because I think it ran for 27 or 29 issues, and that's basically what it became after. It became much more serious, and I liked it. I read through, but then every time when I think about it, the issues I keep coming back to that I really liked were really just the first 12. Honestly, like there was, I'm not saying there weren't good stuff, like
Oh, that's fine.
the really fun stuff was your stuff, the stuff I like. Even I remember I got it like the one issue where the nerd like blackmails her into going to the comic
Mhm.
shop. That's I love that where he's like she which issue was that?
I would say 7. Was it?
Let's see. Let's see. Or was it 8? Because oh, Vartox is great. I know yeah, Vartox. I didn't realize I thought you guys made him up. It was 10. 10 is the issue.
Oh,
Let me
I could see the
yeah.
cover in my mind. I can see the
Yeah,
cover.
I love this cover. I asked Jim, I said, was this wish fulfillment? He was like, yeah. That's what he said, at least for him. I don't know if that was you, but he said that this was
No, that
absolutely
was
his.
him.
That was him. Okay, so you're just gonna put it all. Yeah, I love this. I love all the covers from this series too. One of the things I like about Amanda's art, so she can do like these pretty pinups too that I like.
Mhm.
But I like the story. I love the expressions she does, like the like even this, like the proud, and then you have like the concern. Like she's great with these things. And Vartox, Jimmy had mentioned that he'd love to do a mini series. I don't know if he ever told you that, but he said if he could, he would love to do like a mini series of Vartox.
Yeah, that's a riff on the original appearance cover, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, is that right? Yeah. What
It's,
is he from?
he's a ripoff of Zardos, the Sean Connery movie
Oh, that's right.
a
That's
long
right.
time ago, from
That's
the
funny.
from the hippie era, the hippie LSD era
That checks
of
out.
filmmaking.
That checks out. Yeah. That was fun. So was Power Girl a character? I know you were more of a Marvel guy. Like, what drew you to write Power Girl?
I like the character. I like the Wally Wood version. I like the look of the character. I like the fact that. So this is the thing is that they're doing. It's like it seems like everyone's doing it now, but we were always trying to have fun with the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I remember an editor told me we don't do that. Like we don't make fun of the characters. which now I hear it all the time. They make
Uh,
they make fun of the characters all the time.
that's all they do now, but they don't do it in the way that like Power Girl did it, like where
Right.
it was.
And actually, there at one point I wanted to do a teen Titans type comic where all the kids were like fans of the characters, so that they would have all the stuff on them. So like they'd have a jacket with the Batman symbol on the back, and this was like years ago. And now it's kind of like that's a thing. I see it even in the Marvel Avengers video game, the way Kamala Khan has her sort of so there's a fan aspect of it that exists, and I was trying to push that into the DC universe years and years ago, and it kept getting shot down. My first joke was chicken boots with Hawkman, because I always thought the boots were kind of funny looking. So of course a villain would say something about the boots, just like make them, but I remember it was something to do with Catwoman, and I was making a joke about the outfit, and that got shot down like pretty seriously. I was like, wow. You just want to be able to pick up a comic and have fun with it.
Yeah.
You can have all the serious comics, you can have whatever you want. You can have the Dark Knight universe impact everything. But at least some comics you have to pick up and go, I'm reading this just to sheerly enjoy it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I love like the running joke that like every time Power Girl saves a guy, like they always hit on her. Like it's felt so self-aware is one of the things I really liked about this run. And also they did that. Like I remember when I was first getting into comics, it was the New 52, and it's funny, I just wasn't interested in a lot of, because it was like, well, if I have to choose, I'm just going to choose a lot of the old stuff. And I remember they did some weird, like they changed Power Girl's costume, and it looked stupid. And they changed Black Canaries too. And I was like, why are they doing that? Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's definitely not broke. Like, I mean, this is everyone and I love how, like, because Power Girl's like, yeah, it's basically just Supergirl, but she's like, there's so much different personality. Like she's such a fun character in the way she interacts with everyone in the universe. And I totally get where they could have come from in terms of the serious, but like nature, because this was after Infinite Crisis, right? Where she
Can you hold on 1 second?
Of course, yeah. Take your time. Take your time. Yeah, guys, make sure you back stand Hope. I'll put the link in the chat.
The dog grabbed a magazine just to get me to chase him around the house. I'm just going to give up on that magazine.
That's nice. Yeah, that's this was the one that I got all you guys to sign. This one right here. I love this cover too. Yeah. So what I want to ask about, because a lot of, oftentimes people get excited about, even if you don't own the character, creating a character for this universe. So
right.
What was the conception of Terra like? Because I feel like she doesn't get used a lot. And I had never really cared for the character, know the character, but like then I read your stuff. I like it. I like this character. What was the creative process behind her?
Well, essentially DC didn't have like an underground world, like fully formed underground world. And Dan DiDio wanted us to develop a character, and we were trying to do it as an original character, but there was concern that we needed the branding, the name branding, which makes sense. It's unfortunate, just like you said. Again, it goes back to sort of automatic purchases of things. Right. It's one of those things where, I recognize that name, and so that's what we did. So we said, okay, so we have Terra. We're going to just make a new version of the Terra character, but open up a whole other world. Right. And it just hasn't. I guess it just didn't catch on with anyone.
I was reading that earlier today. I'm glad it's fresh in my mind. I think ultimately that hurt the character. I think because the thing is, once they bring back the old Terra, even if this one is, you could argue, is better, it doesn't matter, because the people are just going to go back to the older thing. So I think like an Atlee, I know you had an interesting story behind the name too. But
my niece's name.
Yeah, and Atlee is such a cool name. Like I had never, but yeah, I mean, this is like, I like Amanda's design too. Amanda plays to her audience very well. But yeah, she's like Terra. She's a fun character, and I wish she was used more. Would you like? Do you think they'd ever just start calling her Atlee? Like, or would you have a different name for her if you were to ever come back to the character? Or
I probably would. I probably would look at it like she's like, wait, there's another like we'd have to do something
yeah,
fun with another Terra. Like I liked Terra as a character. I thought
yeah,
she was great in the Titans, and her whole storyline was great. So I was, it was kind of a thing to me where I was like, oh, people are going to get mad about this, and I understand why they would be because it was done,
mm,
so well. And but it's work for hire, and you got to you
right,
got to pay the bills, and you got to do what your
yeah,
boss wants. So
right, yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I Yeah, I mean, the design is good. I like the because I read it. I like the idea that because even I went down a bit of a rabbit hole like because I was just out of pure curiosity, like nothing else. There was this like YouTube series that was like the conspiracy iceberg, like, and I just and I remember after a certain point I was like, I should start writing down. These are all great story ideas. Like it doesn't. Most of it's absolute bullshit. Doesn't matter because it's just fat from a concept standpoint. And I was so amazed at how much because I had never thought about this. Like the Hollow Earth thing comes
mm-hmm.
up. They use it to explain like and it's like even if it's just not true at all, the fact that it's like such a perfect it's kind of like aliens. Oh yeah, well, this doesn't make sense. Aliens. Or it doesn't make sense, Hollow Earth. So did you go down that rabbit hole when you were writing Terra?
No, I was just trying to make a likable character that hopefully would stick around. So I was just trying to come up and trying to do world building and open up a section that other people could use. But because we had a lot of fun with Daughters of Dragon, or some of my favorite characters. The whole Iron Fist, Power Man, Misty Knight, Colleen,
Right, yeah.
that whole thing. And so I had a lot of fun messing around with Mole Man and sort of having them dealing with that character in a way that hadn't been seen before, but it was also very, very retro. I tried to make a modern interpretation of a 70s exploitation movie, but that these characters came from initially were inspired by. So it was, I wanted it to be fun for Atlee to be from a different place and for for that world to be there, but it just went the way it went.
Yeah, I wish I really do because I like the in that 4 issues. Honestly, one of the things I like is like you're able to do like entire villains origins in like a few pages. Like the pacing is so solid, and the that story is so fun. And it's really a shame that they didn't expand on that because I think that's great. Like all the how the all that stuff. I would have loved to see that side of the universe more. And but we have what we have, and what we have was very solid. So I do want to ask. I know we've been going for a bit about the video games you worked on because my first YouTube video was Injustice videos. They were horrible videos. They're horrible videos going back. Like I was like in my pre-puberty voice. Every time they'd make like even the slightest announcement or some because Ed Boon would always just like troll like on Twitter. He'd be like he'd do things like he'd have like a desk Hal and then like something with Michael Jordan. So people be like, oh my God, is this Hal Jordan? Or he'd be like, it's cold out. And they'd be like, Mr. Freeze. Like he would just tweet this stuff that he knows
I
will get the
remember when he was
fans.
doing that. Yeah.
And so like I was one of those people where like I would make videos on all this stuff. Not good videos, but I was like very hyped for Injustice. And so that's how I started my channel. And I know actually I talked to John Nee. He said he got you involved with MK versus DC and Injustice, you and Jimmy.
Yep.
So were you a fan of Mortal Kombat before MK versus DC?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I love the lore and stuff. Did you have any say on the roster in either of those games? Or were you just kind of given?
No, I mean they were pretty much in place. We were just brought in to kind of make sure the properties were being treated the way that the branding was there, and to make sure that the characters behaved like the characters.
That's great. Yeah.
And just sort of making sure that all that stuff worked out.
Yeah, that's great.
It was fun. It was nice to meet those guys. It was a good introduction to what it's like in the video game production world. It's a lot different from comics in that
Yeah.
respect, because there's so many people working on so many moving parts.
Yeah,
And
that must have been crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was great. I mean, tons of people play Injustice, so like they were. I'm sure a lot of them were interested. In terms of like evil Superman, like how far along was the story when you got involved?
The basics of it were there. We just had to come up with different ways, just to sort of nudge things in a way that, again, protected the branding and made the characters act like the characters. So, we helped develop some of the stuff relating to how what would push him to that point, because Superman's such
Right.
a beloved.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the things that I liked about Injustice was that you really took the time to like how bad it had to be for it to get to that point. That was one of the things I really liked, and I do wish, because you are great at writing funny characters. I do wish that that Johnny Cage was in MK versus DC,
Mm.
but yeah. So you didn't really have a say in the rosters of those games.
No, I mean, we were brought in essentially to help navigate the two Warner Brothers and Midway at that point, before Warner Brothers
Right.
acquired Midway. So it was kind of like they had hit sort of an impasse. And there's a lot of people. There's a room full of people representing both sides. And we just came in and said, all right, we're going to help you make this work with both sides. Because, I mean, obviously, Midway had a huge amount of success doing things their way.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers has a way that they do things. And so the marriage of that was we were just kind of brought in to make sure that everything flowed properly.
Right.
And, we did look at some stuff, and we did like some coaching and some story stuff. But it wasn't like we walked in there with the Bible and said, here's, the script for the game.
Right. And I know there was a lot of those like character interactions, like when they'd clash and things like that. Did you guys write any dialogue for that or anything like that, or no?
It's hard. I mean, this is like quite a while ago. So I'm trying to remember how much we did dialogue wise in that one, as opposed, I think we did more in the next one.
Mm-hmm. You worked on Injustice 2 as well?
I think I'm trying to remember. I get really fuzzy about this because I know we had been talking to them about it, but I don't remember all the exact details of where it was. Like I know we did dialogue for Prototype because we were doing ancillary dialogue. So if you walk past the TV set, whatever's happening on the TV set is dialogue we wrote, or like NPC characters, if they're talking, we wrote dialogue for them. But it means, again, it's a collaborative process. So especially when you're dealing with a massive, gaming company, right, and a massive entertainment corporation. So I think it was just, I can't remember all the details, to be honest.
Well, I don't, that sounds like it was a lot, but that was really fun. It's been great having you on, seriously, all this stuff.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'd love
to talk. If you ever want to talk again, let me know. But guys, make sure you check out Hope. Is there anything else? What's the best way for people to reach you? What's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing?
I have a mailing list that I do rather infrequently, but that I'm not really on social media anymore. You can go to at Bleeding Pulp on Instagram that I'm going to post stuff on, but I'm not doing any of my own. I've got rid of all my personal accounts.
Right.
But then jvgray.com is my website. You can sign up for the newsletter and then put stuff in there. And if you become a Kickstarter backer, you're going to hear from me a lot, because I like to interact with the backers and post updates and let you know when the next thing's coming, whatever the next project is, or when the next Kickstarter is.
Right. And I made sure to share that website in the chat. Everyone, make sure you check out jvgray.com and Bleeding Pulp on Instagram. And was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we covered a lot. I mean, we could be here. I'm sure we could be here for another hour easily.
Yeah. Easily. I mean, listen, I'm a nerd, I always, but doors open to you in the future. It's been great having you on. Thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate that.
It's been great talking to you. All so, everyone make sure to check out Justin's stuff, and we'll be back next week. Next week, I'm interviewing a friend of mine, Paul Thayer. I haven't made the thumbnail yet. It'll be up today. He has a Kickstarter campaign as well. Great guy. So we'll be in touch with him. But Justin, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Vaughn. I appreciate it.
Of course. All right. See you.